Welcome to the IaREIA and Iowa Landlord Association, where we educate, advocate, and empower real estate investors.
Okay, well, some of our members and stakeholders know Christopher Warnock, who is an attorney that represents both landlords and real estate or tenants. And you've done at least 4 trainings for us. And I invited Christopher to address some of this COVID-19, these issues that have come up because of the clerk of courts. They aren't accepting filings because the Supreme Court issued some kind of a administrative action, and then the other one was the governor issued a proclamation. So I've just invited him. I'm going to let him take control of the meeting, but we'll visit a little bit. But I sent you some questions and you've done some prep, so why don't you go ahead and take control and tell us what you've learned in the last few days, Christopher?
Okay, so like everybody else, I've been kind of sitting here and all this amazing, stuff has been flying back and forth. What I first started getting is that the new Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court started issuing orders for the court as to how to deal with COVID-19. And the first order was, well, if you've got it, if you've been tested positive, don't come to court, which, that I was like, well, okay, sure. The next was, and my thought was, look, we basically need to shut down the civil cases and focus on the criminal stuff, the emergency criminal stuff. And that's essentially what the Chief Justice did in the process of 2 more orders. So the current, what's in place now is that essentially all civil trials have been continued to May 4th. And if anything is pending in terms of a trial, it's supposed to be rescheduled for May 4th. Okay, so that's what the Chief Justice said. Now, just today, the Iowa courts use electronic filing, the EDMS system. And just today, I went ahead and filed an appeal. I have an appeal in a small claims case. So I filed it and, I got the automated stuff back, and I assume they're going to accept it. So it's not as if the court system is not accepting any filings. Now, I can see why, though, the clerks, it's all kind of depending on where they're coming from. They might say, oh, we're not going to do FEDs, because what Reynolds did, the governor did, was to issue a proclamation saying, okay, we're suspending certain types of FEDs. Okay, so what her proclamation says is that, okay, under 648.1, there's 6 types of FEDs. I'm going to suspend 2 through 6, and that includes FEDs for holdover tenants, FEDs for violation of lease, and then also FEDs for non-payment of rent. So those are all now suspended. What she didn't suspend was essentially the squatter evictions are also, she said, emergency. So those have been left open. Now the third option is that she doesn't say anything about clear and present danger, because all she talked about was 562.27, okay? And that's the normal, remedies of a landlord. 27A is clear and present danger. And so the clear and present danger FEDs have not been suspended. Now, a couple things from the court. Chief Justice Christensen, she suspended small claims cases in general. However, you can still do an FED by phone. So that was before the governor. So that she left open the possibility of doing a regular FED by phone, and then also classified clear and present danger FEDs as being emergency and even being in person. So we still have the option to file a clear and present danger FED, and the court would potentially even do that in person. So it's pretty, we generally think of FEDs as being rent-based. And so, that's a pretty strong, pretty much wiping out a lot of what people normally do. So that's sort of what's going on with that. Now, as far as how each individual county, I haven't tried to file an FED. I was having trouble. There was some glitches or something with the EDMS system this morning as I was trying to file. So that's all they need on top of the COVID-19 is problems with because that EDMS system will go down every so often, which shuts everything down. So that's that. Now, what do I think about this? A couple things. As I looked at the governor's order, the statutes that she's relying on to suspend the FED, The first one says that if in an emergency, the governor can suspend the provisions of a regulatory statute prescribing the statutes for conduct of state business or state agency if that would prevent necessary action in coping with emergencies. So that's more like, okay, you have to have 5 people in the car or you can't drive the car or something like that. Or it says on request of a local governing, suspend statutes limiting local governments and their ability to provide services. I mean, these are having to do with state agencies or provision of aid. And then the other one is if there's a public health disaster, the health department may take reasonable measures to prevent the transmission of infectious disease. So again, those kind of questionable as far as doing the FEDs. However, what this reminds me of is if you're in an accident, and there's a cop says, okay, move your car up the street, and it's a one-way street. So I mean, in this emergency situation, you don't want to sit and argue with the cop, and I don't think we want to be arguing with the governor over it in general. But my sense of it is that
Yeah.
I think that this was thought of as being a temporary measure. I don't think it's going to be. I think what's going to happen is this is just going to keep getting extended. And I really think that what they should have done was to say that evictions, FEDs for non-payment of rent for people that have the financial problems due to COVID-19, then that would be what you'd limit it to. But it seems to me that if you're a tenant and you can pay, you ought to be paying. And if you're a tenant and you're causing problems, they still should be able to do an FED. As long as that's not a pretext. So, but I don't think now is the time to be suddenly saying, oh, we should be able to throw people out on the street because they can't pay because they lost their job due to COVID-19.
Well, that's the thing that does concern me. In fact, I did send you a list of 5 questions or so that one of our stakeholders sent, and she had made some good points. I don't know, maybe I should show that.
Well, the first one here says, with the no evictions orders, do landlords get some relief from rent payments in lieu of evictions? Rental income is my only source of income. I mean, I think that's just kind of puts your finger on it. I mean, what about saying, okay, there's people that don't have enough money to buy food, so now all food will be free. And you can go into Hy-Vee and you can load up your cart and you can take it out because those people need food. It's really not understanding that, this is a system and the landlords have to provide maintenance. They need to be able to pay their bills too. And so that's not really, I think, again, it was thought of as being temporary and they just were rushing through this without thinking of these other consequences. I mean, if this gets stretched out for months though, and the expectation is the landlord is going to be providing maintenance, it becomes really, I think, more difficult.
Well, and hopefully the federal government will take the perspective of we're going to allow those people who have lost their job to apply for unemployment insurance. The last version of that I heard that was being given serious consideration was at least 3 months. So that some of this may change. That's the thing, but in the meantime, the thing to keep in mind is if you attempt to file an FED, it's only going to be like poking the pig.
Yeah, I would say the couple things of that. Now, if you had a situation, for example, where somebody was, having big parties and having a bunch of people over, and I think then that would be an appropriate grounds for an FED. I mean, that's the whole point of this was so that, for health purposes. So if someone's doing something that's causing a health hazard, particularly with COVID-19, then I don't think this is going to be, even the courts, it might be difficult. I think you need an attorney is what I would say at this point. If you want to file that kind of FED, you need to get an attorney, and maybe you should try contacting me. I don't have 500 people calling me up, but maybe Andrew could sort of contact Andrew and he can then maybe filter it. But I guess what I would say about this is that I think really that hopefully the view is that we're all in this together, and that, we're all going to be suffering from this more or less, and we need to all pull together. And I don't think that it's not going to be a viable long-term solution to say that all tenants don't have to pay their rent for an extended period of time. And I really would like to see this. I think the right thing to do is to not evict people that can't pay the rent because of the COVID-19. but we need a more
Mhm.
focused approach, and we also need to be thinking about everybody in the chain, and the landlord suffering from this as well.
Well, and I think a landlord should take the approach, or a landlord or property manager can take the approach of, you can still serve the 3-day notice to pay unpaid rent. It's just that at the end of that time, you're going to want some kind of a legitimate excuse from the tenant and a conversation. But if they say, well, I'm just not paying because I don't have the money, and I was, as a waiter or waitress down at the local, Iowa Public Utilities, or whatever the name of that place is, in Iowa City, that really great place to eat on the river. They could make enough money to pay their rent, and students could get enough money from their different programs. But the point is that even if you have a legitimate reason, unless it's clear and present danger, or what was the other one you mentioned?
I think basically that, again, a clear and present danger, those are tricky ones to do. Again, I think you'll need a lawyer for those too. Those are not the easiest, to make in terms of so what I would say is, if people have situations that are other than a non-payment of rent, contact Andrew and talk to him, and then he can sort of bring it in. But I would be willing to get involved in some of that, but probably that would need to go through Andrew, I think, so we can coordinate in terms of how our approach.
Well, unless people want to take it on themselves, but what the court is saying right now is, look, we're not really going to be handling cases, but is it still kind of in limbo as to whether the court might go ahead and take oral arguments over a telephone?
Again, I think really what you need is, at this point, it's going to be a lot of chaos with the court, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you want to get anything done, you're going to need an attorney to cut through that. And that's the sort of thing is that in my county, in Johnson County, I know the magistrates, I know the clerks, and I could probably get a preliminary read as far as doing stuff. Frankly, with no hearings, the judges don't have a heck of a lot to do. I think they're actually going to be sitting around there. They'll be busy with other stuff, but I think that, but this is uncharted territory. And so to try to do it yourself and to roll in there and try to do yourself a pro se, clear and present danger FED with no knowledge of what's going on and in this chaotic situation, I think they're probably just not going to take it, would be my guess.
But if you do choose to go ahead as a pro se litigant and do that, please keep in touch with us. And I appreciate you saying that, Christopher, that you're being available, I'm being available. We want to have communications going on of what's your response from the court if you try to file a case. If they say, quit doing this, don't you understand the governor's issued a moratorium against evictions? But if you have somebody that's tearing up your place, not too long ago, we had our ex-president, Christopher, who had a tenant right then and there. It was tearing things off the wall and cabinets and causing great grief for his girlfriend, and also, destroying the property. He ended up being arrested, but it took some work. But so each of these cases are unique. But if you get some response that's, worthy of sharing, please pick up the phone and let us know what's going on, because there may be some variability to this.
Right. And I think what I would say about lobbying would be, I think the best possible result that could be gotten out of this would be, for the extensions of it, that it was limited to people that had financial problems due to COVID-19, and that we don't have this MEDAX approach. And that, because I honestly think there's a significant number of tenants that if they don't have the threat of an FED or late fees, they wouldn't pay, even if they could. And why would you? Why would I want to spend my money on rent? I don't want to pay rent. I think there's plenty of good tenants out there. I think there's tenants that will continue to pay, but I think you end up basically rewarding bad actors if you have such a broad brush with this. And nobody else has been put in this. Again, like the city, we're not going to collect property taxes. How are you going to pick up the trash? In 3 months, how are we going to pay for the firemen? That's the same thing with foreclosures. It's like, we just can't stop permanently. Now, the problem is with landlords is that y'all have a bad PR. people have this tendency not to like landlords. So, okay, fine, we'll stick it to them. That's just not, it's not going to work. And, there has to be a longer term solution to this, which will probably involve government, and some stepping in and maybe paying stipends or some kind of Section 8 or some kind of very broad, funding. But it can't simply be, oh, well, no tenant has to pay their rent and the landlords all take it on the chin. That's just not practical in the long term.
You mentioned Section 8 and public housing assistance. It could be that those are excellent programs for the landlord to actually have a tenant on those programs currently, because those checks will go straight to the landlord in spite of what the governor says.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the typical. I mean, it's not unusual for people with Section 8 tenants for the tenant not to pay the $50 or whatever, and then they don't care because they get the. But see, that's too cumbersome. At this point, we're going to need some kind of emergency stuff, and also for people that won't necessarily qualify for Section 8 and have a voucher and all that. I mean, there's only a limited number of vouchers, blah blah blah. So,
well, and Polk County has a program, and I think every county has kind of an emergency program, which a tenant can use one time a year or something, that they can take it down to a local assistance program and they can get their rent paid. They have to be in the middle of the eviction process, though. Or maybe
see, again, all this stuff is quite, we're kind of doing it on the fly. But I just, the other thing I would say is that we kind of, and again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not a landlord, and I haven't suffered from this yet, but we really are all in this together, and we're going to need to keep pulling together, and we can't say, oh, the other side has to take the whole hit. We're going to kind of have, that's kind of my message to landlords and tenants in general, is if you've got a problem, it's a mutual problem. And we all got to work together, and there's going to be some pain on both sides. So that's what I would say about this, is that we're all going to have to share the pain for a while. And again, it's very easy for me to say because I'm not in that position, but I think that's probably the fairest thing, is that we really need to think as a community, as a state, as a country, that we're all in this together. We're all going to help each other out through this, and we're going to try to treat everybody as fairly as possible. But I don't think, like I said, as a temporary for April, okay, maybe. But if this just keeps getting extended, that's just not a tenable way of dealing with the situation. And the money's got to flow from somewhere in order for this to work.
Well, okay. Well, I thank you for your time today. It's a good update on where we are, and just to raise awareness of the fact that if you attempt to do an FED, folks, you may run into a juggernaut down there at the clerk of court in that system, and you really don't want to be angering the tenants to lawyer up and go to legal aid and say they know it's on the TV and on the news constantly that there's a moratorium against evictions. So just try to keep the communication lines open, but maybe go ahead and serve that 3-day notice to pay unpaid rent. But then you may have to just stop right there and grin and bear it for a while. Maybe we'll get a moratorium though from the banks that say, well, if you have a tenant that can't pay and it's COVID-19 related, well, we're going to relax the requirement for you to pay rent for 90 days or something.
Yeah, I mean, at some point it's gonna, that may be what you'll have to be doing. But I'm thinking all the ins and outs of this is sort of like, with the peaceable possession, does that toll all that? I think essentially what happens is that if they put the evictions back in place, that they're not paying the rent and you get them out just like you would normally anyway, and they still owe you the rent. I mean, for a lot of people, when they're not paying the rent, there's nothing there anyway. So you're just getting them out to get somebody else new in. Would you be able to get somebody else new in right now anyway? And that's another problem too. Or how are you going to show the place? I mean, all these issues, because our normal thing, we're not quite adjusted to this whole brave new world. And, probably evicting them doesn't really help that much. If there's no money, they're not going to pay you, and kicking them out, I don't know. Again, the problem comes in if they're wanting maintenance, if you're paying utilities, blah, 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 where there's a cost for you for that. And they're sort of like, they're not, there's nothing, no contribution from the tenant towards that. So all these issues, we're all kind of doing this on the fly. But let's do our best. Let's pull together, and let's make sure there's a fair deal for both landlords and tenants.
Again, appreciate your time today, and we'll continue to be in touch. And folks, like I say, if you hear anything that's sheds more light on this and makes it clearer for everyone, please reach out to either one of us, and we sure appreciate your time listening to this now. Take care. Thanks, Christopher.
All right, thanks.
You bet.
Thanks for watching. We hope this production empowered your business. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more great content. And don't forget to join us in person for powerful networking and priceless information at our next live event. For all event information, please go to our website,